Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a wild ride, the incredibly complex financial collapse, liquidation, and the eventual rebirth of one of the most storied institutions in all of world sports. It's a saga packed with historic grandeur, absolute financial ruin, and, of course, some fiercely intense debate. Let's get right into it.
So, you have to ask yourself, how exactly does a 150-year-old sporting giant end up being sold for just a single pound? Imagine an organization with a century and a half of dominance, millions of diehard supporters, and a trophy cabinet that's practically overflowing, suddenly finding itself completely hollowed out. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the Giants' foundation. Second, the financial rot begins. Third, the one-pound takeover. Fourth, administration and liquidation. Fifth, the new club debate. And finally, number 6, the long climb back.
All right, let's start with part 1, the Giants' foundation.
To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this collapse, we first need to appreciate the heavy historical weight of Rangers Football Club. Founded way back in 1872, it wasn't just a team, it was a cultural pillar. Just look at this 1948 quote from legendary manager Bill Struth. Notice his use of words like sacred trust and shrine. He established this deeply revered, almost religious ethos around the club's standards.
I mean, the scale of Struth's influence was just staggering. The guy managed the team for 34 years, literally right up until he was 79 years old. During that time, he secured 18 league titles and 10 Scottish Cups. He enforced these notoriously strict dress codes and moral standards, and he was the main driving force behind the iconic 1929 Ibrox main stand. Struth's tenure firmly cemented Rangers as an institution of absolute excellence and uncompromising high standards.
Which brings us to part 2. The financial rot begins.
So those uncompromising standards we just talked about, well, they eventually gave way to some severe financial mismanagement. The absolutely crucial point to understand here is employee benefit trusts, or EBTs. Between 2001 and 2010, Rangers utilized this specific financial scheme to make trust payments to their players and staff. The problem? It was later found they deliberately failed to disclose these payments to the UK tax authority, HMRC, and that sparked what became known informally as the Big Tax Case.
And that brings us to this staggering number. £49 million. That was the potential tax bill. By 2010, HMRC assessed that when you include all the interest and penalties, Rangers could owe upwards of £49 million. This wasn't just a heavy fine, right? This was a catastrophic liability that threatened to put the entire club completely out of business.
Even before that final tax hammer actually fell, things were already looking incredibly dire. By 2009, owing up to £30 million to the bank, the financial rot was so deep that legendary team manager Walter Smith openly admitted to the press that Lloyd's banking group was effectively running the club. The boardroom had completely lost control.
Let's move on to part 3, the one-pound takeover.
With the bank aggressively demanding its money and that massive tax case looming in the background, we get one of the most unbelievable transactions in corporate sports history. Longtime owner David Murray essentially gives the club away, selling his controlling interest to Craig White for exactly one single pound, fully believing White was going to clear the debts. But here is the crazy part. To actually fund the buyout and pay off the bank, White secretly borrowed £26.7 million against the fans' future season ticket sales via a firm called Ticketus. He was literally mortgaging the club's future just to walk through the front door. Okay, on to part 4, administration and liquidation.
Unsurprisingly, that financial house of cards collapsed real quick when White failed to remit basic employee taxes. The descent in 2012 was incredibly rapid and totally chaotic. In February, Rangers enters administration, taking an immediate sporting hit with a 10-point deduction. By June, HMRC formally rejects a proposed deal, a CVA, to settle those debts. And by October, the original corporate entity of Rangers Football Club plc was legally approved for liquidation. A century and a half of corporate history basically erased in a matter of months.
Because HMRC flat out refused a compromise deal on those massive tax debts, the original Rangers corporate entity just couldn't survive. The administrators had their hands tied. They were forced to execute a very messy sale of the club's historic assets. We're talking the stadium, the training ground, the actual business itself, to a newly formed corporate entity named Sevco Scotland Ltd, which was led by a brand new consortium.
This brings us to part 5, the new club debate.
Now, this corporate transfer sparked a fiercely polarizing debate in Scottish football. Just to show you the real-world chaos of this transition, several key first-team players legally objected to having their contracts transferred to the new company under employment regulations. Top international players, guys like Stephen Naismith, Stephen Davis, and Stephen Whittaker, argue they had absolutely no contract with the new entity, and they just walked away as free agents to English Premier League clubs. So yeah, the transition was anything but seamless.
So we're left with this stark divide. On one hand, you have the legal and governing bodies, like UEFA and the Scottish Professional Football League, who officially recognize sporting continuity. They ruled that the new corporate entity legally acquired the history and the goodwill of the club founded in 1872. But on the other hand, intense rivalries fuel the assertion that the original Rangers died in 2012. Rival fans and even a few former players point directly to the liquidation of the original company as a total severance of identity, dubbing them a completely new club.
The debate got so intense that even advertising regulators had to get involved. Back in 2013, after getting complaints about Rangers marketing themselves based on their pre-2012 history, the Advertising Standards Authority actually ruled in favor of the club. They concluded that, under sporting rules, the club's historical continuity remained totally intact despite the corporate liquidation and the change of ownership.
And finally, Part 6, the long climb back. After being refused direct entry back into the top flight by a 10-to-1 vote from rival clubs, the newly structured Rangers had to start their sporting journey from the absolute bottom. The fans actually call this the journey. It started in the 3rd division, which is the 4th tier of Scottish football. Step by step, they had to grind it out and win every single lower division title over 4 grueling years. They finally made their return to the Scottish Premiership for the 2016-17 season. And remarkably, by 2022, they had climbed all the way back to the top of European football, making it to the UEFA Europa League final.
But honestly, no milestone meant more to the supporters than this number right here, 55. In 2021, Rangers won their 55th overall Scottish League title. Not only did this represent the absolute culmination of their climb back from the 4th tier, but it crucially ended a massive 9-year championship run by their bitter rivals Celtic, stopping them from setting an all-time record of 10 titles in a row. From the strict, moral foundations of Bill Struth down to total, catastrophic financial ruin, and then a literal rebirth from the bottom of the footballing pyramid, it is a story completely unique in modern sports. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. When a financial entity dies, but the fans, the stadium, and the governing bodies carry the name forward, does a club's true identity live in its corporate boardroom, or does it live in the stands? Think about that for a bit. See you next time.